All right, welcome to Module 1, Video 3, and today we're going to talk about Apartment Underwriting 202. So this is the more advanced version. If you haven't watched Apartment Underwriting 101, definitely watch that because you need to know the different terms, first. Otherwise, this will sound Greek to you. Okay, so definitely watch video number 2, Module 1, Apartment Underwriting 101 first before you go into this video. All right, but in this video, we will talk about quick ways to evaluate deals, okay? Because, that's how you are able to determine really quickly whether to look into a deal in more detail or not. So by having this quick ways to evaluate deals, it will save you a lot of time, so that you just pass on deals that are not good for you. Next, we're going to discuss this very important concept, which is how do you find the good in deals. I've heard, like Mike Ely always encounters this with newbie investors, especially that they complain that there are no good deals. The apartment market is so hot, there are no good deals out there. Well, there are good deals. Sometimes the way you look at a deal will determine whether or not the deal is good or not, you know. So it also depends on how you look at deals. Because a lot of newbie investors, they're looking for the perfect deal. Well, those deals don't exist, right? Deals that you can buy at 50% of market value, that, where the property is performing or making money. Yeah, I mean, those deals don't exist anymore. All right. So sometimes, on paper, they don't look like they're making money, but those are precisely the deals that you want. All right. And I'll show you an example of $1 million deal that Mike and Nate did to show you how they think, so that when you encounter a deal similar to that, then now you know that there are opportunities, out there. Okay. There's an opportunity there. All right. So some quick ways to know that you have a deal. One way is, this thing called rent per square foot. So for example, in Cincinnati, rent should be at least $1 per square foot or higher, okay? And if you find a building where rents are lower than $1 per square foot, that can be an opportunity. Notice I said that can be an opportunity. I did not say it's definitely an opportunity, because it depends on how, the asking price, right? But if the rents is way below $1 per square foot, then you know that management and the owner, they're not doing their jobs, right? Of keeping up with the rent increases and maintaining the property to command, market rents. So therefore, the property can be mismanaged, and therefore that can be a source of opportunity. Now, um, another opportunity or another quick way to know if you have a deal, for example, is when you find a building. In fact, Mike found a building as I record this video like about a month ago. So they have it under contract now. They did the due diligence, but bottom line, the owner, inherited, like I think like 5 buildings, and he doesn't really care about them. He doesn't like Section 8, so he just wants to sell them. And the rents are really like way below market value. Like, like for 2 bedrooms, I think they're only getting like 550 a month when you can get Section 8 about 900, So if you can convert the tenants to Section 8 and collect higher rent, you know, then it creates significant value. Okay. So as I record this video, the rent in Cincinnati for 1 bedroom is 737. That's the maximum that you can get. Now that's all utilities paid, so it still depends, right? And I think right now they're talking of a slight decrease because of the higher cost of utilities. Um, so that's a quick way. If you see that the rents are well below market or well below Section 8, that can be an opportunity for you to come in, increase the rent, and create significant value. Another quick way to know whether you have a deal or not is by looking at the expense ratio. So if the operating expenses are too high, that can be an opportunity, because if you can decrease the expenses, you can increase the value of the building significantly. So for example, like for B and C areas, they go by, roughly the 50% rule. So meaning, if the operating expenses of the property is 50%, if it's a B or C, if it's in the B or C area, okay, then that's okay. There's actually no opportunity there, right? However, if let's say, it's 60%, right? That can be an opportunity there because if you can lower the expenses, right, then you can create significant value. So for example, let's say for a 10% cap, let's just make it simple, 10% cap so that the math is simple, right? If let's say, out of $1 million in NOI, I mean in gross income, let's say it has 60% expense ratio, meaning the NOI is only 400,000, okay, out of $1 million in rental and other income that the building collects. Then right there, maybe you can look at the utilities and see if you can reduce it significantly. Maybe change, do a energy audit, right? Or maybe the turnover is high because they keep on getting bad tenants. They don't do a good job at tenant screening. So whatever you can do, if you can lower it to the average of 50%, that means you just created $100,000 a year of extra income for the building. And at a 10% cap, that just increases the value of the building by $1 million. See? So if you find, a building where expenses are too high or higher than what they should be, then that's an opportunity. All right. Price per unit is another way. And in fact, the deal that I was talking to you about, that Mike and his partners bought, the five buildings. I mean, they found that the price per unit is really low. In fact, I think they should be able to negotiate like an average of $19,000. Or but they're assuming that they'll close at $25,000 per unit. But the thing is, properties in that area, when they are renovated and stabilized, they sell for anywhere from $50,000 to $55,000 per unit. So right there, they know, that it can be a good deal. And when they look at it, I mean, repairs wise, the most it needs is between it's a range between, $3,000 to $10,000 per unit. So even at $10,000 per unit, right? You're talking about acquiring it for $29,000 per unit, all in together with renovation. And with the right management, you've increased the value to $50,000 to $55,000 per unit. I mean, that creates significant value right there, right? And I think it's 128 units. So if they're all in for what, $29,000 per unit, right? But the value is 50,000 conservative value. They just created $21,000 per unit in profit multiplied by 128 units. You're talking about, a total profit of more than $2 million, one deal. Think about it. But they're able to quickly move on this deal. They actually beat out several investors because they're very familiar with the market and they know the exact price per unit to pay. So now let's talk about, how do you look at or how do you find the good in a deal, right? The Chinese has the same word for problem and opportunity. And the truth of the matter is, in apartment investing, problems are opportunities to make money if you can solve the problems. Okay. So let me give you an example. If rents are stagnant and low, okay, that can be an opportunity. So now I said that can be an opportunity. It's not always an opportunity. Okay. You have to be careful with this. Okay. So what you can do is do a demographic or income study and find out, let's say in a 3-mile radius, what's the average or the median household income. So for example, and in fact, I will discuss this, like one of the properties that Mike and Nate worked on. They did exactly this, and they found out that the income is about $40,000 per year, or about 3,300 per month, right? And the income, right, or the rent that you get is about 1:3 of the income generally, you know, or if you want to be more conservative, 1:4. So meaning, right, if you divide 3,300 by 4, right, then people can easily afford a rent of 833 per month. Okay. Now, what they did, they took it one step lower and said, you know what, we can charge $700 per month. Okay. And they can still afford it. We just need to deliver the right product, the right apartment, right? It has to be so good that they're not used to it. And when they see it, it's like, oh yeah, I will gladly pay $200 more because it's so nice, right? So that's the whole point, right? If rents are stagnant and low for a particular property, if the area can actually has the income to afford the higher rent, then that's an opportunity. Now, think about this. This is the impact of a $200 per month per unit increase, okay, to the value of a 50-unit building in a C area. So assume the cap rate is 9%. So $200 per month per unit times 50 units times 12 months per year divided by 9% cap, you increase the value by over $1.3 million. So even if you spend 10,000 per unit on 50 units or 500,000, right? That's a 100% return. You just double your money, okay? So if rents are low, again, that can be an opportunity because can you convert it to Section 8? So we've discussed this already. So again, if you can do that, then the increase in value can be significant. Again, if operating expenses, is higher than 50% of the income, let's say for a B and C area, then that can be an opportunity because can you improve or or eliminate some of the operating inefficiencies? So for example, can you do an energy audit and find out opportunities to decrease utility usage? If repairs and maintenance and turnover costs are high, can those be addressed by just doing the deferred maintenance items that takes up a lot of ongoing maintenance? Like, maybe there is problem with the plumbing. You have a lot of plumbing leaks, right? So instead of doing patch up work, can you replace, like update the plumbing of the whole building? Yes, it takes some capital expenditures to do that, but if you solve it once and it's solved forever, then now your water usage will be low. Now you get less, significantly less calls from tenants about water leakage. Now you don't have to fix dry walls, like ceilings and so on affected by water leakage and so on. So that's just an example, of addressing the deferred maintenance, putting in better management so that you get better tenants who will not destroy the units and stay long term. See, if your tenants stay for 2 years or longer, then, every day the tenant stays longer than 2 years, it's all profit now, right? But if you get turnover, like a lot of turnovers, like every 2 years, your tenant leaves, then that's not good, right? So you better get tenants who will stay longer at the property so that you'll make a lot of money, right? And because turnover is a big cost, right? You have to replace, you have to repaint the unit, you have to, change the flooring probably, right? So there's a lot of cost involved with it, in addition to the marketing to get new tenants and so on. So if you can have, tenants who will stay longer, you know, do a better job at tenant screening, then you can reduce that expense, that turnover expense, and that can improve that will definitely improve the value of the building. So let me give you an example. This is in chapter 24 of Mike's upcoming book. I took this in verbatim, which basically states that, just changing the light bulbs to LED improve the value of the building by $83,000, right? So this is how the math worked out. you know, um, 6 buildings, 10 lighting fixtures, 2 bulbs, used to, consume 60 watts each bulb, but, they replace it with LED that only consumes 7 watts per bulb. And, they save, 66.85 per year, or about 500 per month, at an 8 cap, increase the value of the building by $83,000. I mean, that's crazy, isn't it? And you spend $2,000 in doing that. Okay, so $2,000 investment and you get $83,000 return. I mean, that's ridiculous. All right, so now this is something that that I've learned more from Mike and Nate. I didn't realize the impact of this until I started working with them. And basically, some of the apartment owners, you know, they have what I call accounting classification errors. They consider, CapEx, they include that as part of the operating expenses. And, so for example, and you should not do that, right? Because then you're decreasing the perceived value of the building, okay, unnecessarily. And later on, I will show you the impact of this. So for example, like one-time capital expenditures, like replacing the roof, you know, toilets, windows, cabinets, those should not be included under repairs, maintenance, and turnover, but rather those are included as capital expenditure items. So let me show you what I mean. Carpets. When you replace the carpet, when you're doing a turnover, how do you classify carpet replacement? Is it CapEx or operating expense? If you put operating expense, look at the impact of what you're doing. For a 100-unit building, let's say 20 units for that year, you needed to replace the carpets, okay? At an average cost of $2,500, all right? Now, let's assume the carpet life is 5 years, okay? So the one-time capital expenditure that you spend is $50,000, right? But if you included $50,000 as an operating expense, that's a big no-no, right? Because what you should have done is actually kind of amortize it over 5 years, because that's the lifespan. So that, in your accounting for operating expenses, there's a line item called replacement reserves. Okay, the actual replacement reserve that you should have accounted for is only 1/5 of $50,000. Which is basically $10,000. So that means if you did the accounting incorrectly by including $50,000 as an expense instead of just putting $10,000, okay? Then you at a 6 cap, let's say it's in an A area, right? 6 cap, you just reduce the value of the building by over $600,000. Conversely, if you do the accounting correctly, you just increase the value of the building, okay, by $600,000, by over $600,000. I mean, can you, can, and that's just 20 units out of 100. Do you realize the impact of this? I mean, this is huge, right? And, this error is being committed by a lot of investors, especially for the smaller buildings, okay? They don't do the accounting right. They have accounting classification errors. So another opportunity that you can look into is, well, before I met Mike and Nate, I'm always under the impression that I have to buy properties in good areas, right? You've heard of the, hackneyed phrase, real estate is all about location, location, location. Well, it is true and it is false at the same time, because the impression that it creates is you have to buy in A areas or B areas, right? Good areas, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, over the long run, it actually makes sense to buy in A and B areas. However, Mike and Nate's strategies, and I heard this from Nate, is that they buy in the border between A or B area and a bad area. Okay. Why do they buy at the border? Well, because on the border, you know, there is a propensity, for the property to improve drastically, especially if there's a new employer coming to the area, right? So there's a new employer coming into the area, which used to be a bad area, or right now is a bad area, but it's bordering a good area. Then you can see significant increase in value. you know so this will have the biggest impact on DNF areas. So for example, there's a place in Cincinnati called Avondale, okay, and this is the Eden Irwin project. The rents for 2 bedrooms 3 years ago was only like $500 to $600 per month, but with the Cincinnati Children's Hospital bringing in 5,000 jobs, Mike and Nate knew that the rents will increase. Now, Mike, being very, very conservative, he assumed $850 per month in their underwriting, okay, when he underwrote the deal. And even then, the deal made sense, right? And then all of a sudden, like right now, they were able to get $1,250 per month in rent, right? And they have a waiting list, right? Because new builds in the area, the rent is about $1,600 per month for 2 bedrooms. I mean, it's crazy, right? So, other investors would have easily walked away from a deal like this because they'll be like, oh, it's in a bad area, right? You know, but actually, the secret is you buy in a bad area that borders a good area, especially if there's a new employer coming in, or if an existing employer is bringing in a lot more jobs. Because what will happen, it will spill over, to the bad area, you know and then now you get the significant increase in value, because now you get the significant increase in rent, even in a quote unquote bad area, provided it borders, it's like really, really close there. Okay. So like literally this Eden Irwin project is like, you know I think it's like 1 2 3 blocks away from the Cincinnati Children's Hospital. Okay. So it's not like a mile away, or it's not like 10 miles away or 5 miles away. No, this is literally on the border. Okay. So that's how you create those opportunities. All right, so let me give you an example of $1 million deal that Mike and Nate worked on. This is the actual address, and this is in Price Hill, so it's a C minus D plus area. They bought it for $1 million, and the actual renovation cost that they spent is about $1.2 million. So the strategy here, it's value add, okay? And again, value add is basically you solve the building's problems, and by doing so, you create significant value. Okay, so how did they find the deal? A broker referred the deal to them. Okay, so it's off market. The broker didn't even have a chance to list it on LoopNet or the MLS. How did they analyze it? The building have low occupancy. I believe this building only has, if I remember correctly, about 20% occupancy. And on top of that, the rent is really low. It's only $550 per month. They did Nate calls it a tapestry report, which is basically an income demographics analysis. And they realized that they can easily increase the rent to $650 per month, and it's still affordable to the tenants. So that increase should, at a 10 cap, which is conservative, should increase the value of the building, by $3 million. And remember, they were buying it for $1 million, and by that time they estimated they needed $1 million to renovate it. They actually spent 1.2. So there's significant value in there, right? Um, all right. So there's the detailed math if you want, right? They even assume a 55% expense ratio, which is typical for an older building, especially if it's in a C minus D area. All right. So very, very conservative, $3 million in value, so all in of 2 million, they have $1 million of wiggle room or $1 million of profit. Now, why did they decide to buy it? So again, there's a lot of room there, So best case, they have 1 million. Worst case, they have 800,000. So at 800,000, so the way Mike analyzed deals, it's like so cool. I mean, it's so simple, really. He doesn't, so as long as it passes like the his simple underwriting, then most likely then he knows the deal is a good one, right? And by the same time, it's very, very conservative. So the way he analyzed this deal is very simple. What's the ROI? And when he calculates the ROI, it's not even the total return on investment, really. It's only when the project is sold, assuming there's no cash flow coming in, which is crazy, right? So, he knows the difference between 3 million and 2.2 is 800,000, right? If 2.2 is the all in, right, then project wise, there's a 36%, return on investment, which again is not even the entire return on investment. So this doesn't even account for the cash flow. So because there is a 36% profit spread, even without the cash flow, then it's a good deal because even if you pay for the property all cash, right? So because if you spend 2.2 million, right, and make 36%, I mean, that's a profit that is like, yeah, crazy, right? So why will it be a bad deal, right? So that's how simple Mike analyzes deals actually, and then once so it passes like his gut check, and this is the gut check, right? Then he does a more detailed underwriting. Okay, so how did they finance it? So they went to the bank originally, okay, to finance the purchase, all right, and then raise the capital from private investors to finance the renovation and the down payment. But when they approached banks, no one wanted to give them any money because the building's occupancy is low and it's basically a negative cash flow property. So they used this opportunity to negotiate owner financing at $1 million, 15% down, right? At 4.5% interest only, 5-year balloon. And it was actually better because, they didn't have to bring as much down payment that they were expecting, right? So they get to keep more equity in the deal. So how did they manage to reduce the risk? Well, they controlled the renovation, okay? Through vertical integration, they were very conservative with their underwriting. They were assuming to get $650 per month per unit in rent. They were able to get an average of $679 per month per unit. And by renovating the units at a very high quality, the way, they renovate the unit is, this in a C minus D area, right? So they delivered a product which is one step higher than what the tenants are used to. They delivered a B grade, apartments and building, right? When their client base or the tenant base is used to C minus D plus quality, right? Give them a B, it's like, oh yeah, I'm willing to pay, more than $100 more per month because there is more pride of ownership, better management, better quality units that they can be proud of, and therefore they tend to stay longer there too, right? So they got low vacancy, low turnover, higher rent. It's like it's crazy, right? What they're able to do. Now they increased the occupancy all the way up to 94%. They reduced the expenses significantly. One thing they did was an energy audit. Okay, so for example, in addition to changing the light bulbs to LED, they were able to retrofit the boilers. It becomes smart and more efficient. Just by doing that, improves reduce gas expense, by about 30%. They sold the building 2.5 years later, at a net sales price of 3.7 million. And remember, their all-in cost is 2.2, giving them a profit of over $1.5 million. And I say over $1.5 million because they made money on the cash flow. Okay. But the money made on the cash flow, given that they only held this for 2.5 years, is, a lot less than the money they made when they sold the building, and they and their investors were quite happy when they sold the building and netted, netted about $1.5 million. Okay. Now, what are the challenges along the way? Well, there were water intrusion problems with 24 apartment units since those are below grade. The previous owner installed new roofs but didn't have proper drainage, so they had to redo them. There is high crime. Remember, this is a C-D+ area, so they had to install a CCTV camera and get the residents to participate in a neighborhood crime watch, right? And then for the longest time, they couldn't figure out why their water expense is so high. They realized that there is a busted water line must be somewhere, and it took them a while to find the water line. The busted water line was actually underground, but once they found that out, they addressed the issue quickly and as cheaply as they can. And again, the whole vertical integration was very key in helping them reduce and control their renovation cost. So what lessons that have they learned along the way? Don't shy away from problem properties. The whole purpose of this training video, right? There's a lot of money to be made provided you put the right plan in place and you put the right team that implements that plan. You have to be hands-on. You have to be on-site, to solve issues as they come up. And then whenever you see a problem, most people, would be like discouraged by a problem. But Mike, when faced with a problem, he turned it into a stepping stone. So when, for example, when he encountered the problem that he couldn't get bank financing, he turned it around and negotiated for owner financing and actually made the deal better. Think about that. Most people would be like, oh, I quit, right? But not Mike. How can I make this deal work? And in fact, he actually made the deal work even better. So here's a graphic, that shows the difference between unsuccessful people and successful people like Mike and Nate, right? Unsuccessful people, they let their failures weigh down on them and discourage them, whereas successful people, they use their failures to actually, you know um, they use their failures as stepping stones to become even more successful. All right. So with that, that's the end of the training video. I hope you guys like this and benefited a lot from this. Watch this again and again because I know I've shared a ton of material in here. And the next video, I will show you the apartment deal analyzer. How do you use it? And we will focus more on doing sensitivity analysis and stress testing, as part of a more detailed underwriting so that you will know how to underwrite deals using that apartment deal analyzer. So with that, I will see you in the next training video.